enough to drive me crazy. I don't think my mama's gonna save me. Maybe I'm not flying, but I'm floating. If we're not headed to the top, where we going? 2 miles an hour, can you picture me rolling? Cause life is so much better when you live in slow motion.
Hey, back at it again. What's good with you, man?
I mean, I'm feeling better now because you get to go outside kinda a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, are you familiar with the Mosaic and Falls Church?
Yeah, I am. Like that district? Is it?
Yep.
The Mosaic? Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, it's cool as shit.
Restaurants and stuff?
Yeah, it's really cool.
So they have a Target and stuff in there, and my girl
Yeah.
went to go to Target to, grab some stuff. She was like legit shoulder to shoulder everywhere.
Oh, I bet.
It's just,
Yeah,
it was
people
like
are.
jam.
Well, in West Virginia too, now as of Friday, you got to wear a mask if you
Yep.
go into one of those places. So it's just a
Yeah,
bunch of people
yeah.
breathing heavy. I mean, I've since Friday been wearing one anywhere I go, out in public, and it's just like, God damn, it's hot under here. I hate this shit.
Dude,
but
it's the worst, bro. And,
just
and
breathing
you got
your
a
own
beard
breath.
too, bro.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And having a beard, it doesn't even work right. Like it doesn't do
Yeah.
what it's supposed to do because of the hair, it gets in all around and stuff. And it's like, all right, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to. So.
What if they do a new ordinance about if you have a beard, you have to shave
gotta
it, bro?
shave it. God damn. I guess.
Would you do it, bro?
No, hell no. I'm
You
just
would
not
do
going
it?
out in
Oh,
public.
shit.
I'm just not going out.
Yeah,
Can't
man,
do that
that's just
shit.
wild, dude.
It's like, how about I'll trim it up nice for you. Is that will that work?
Yeah.
Like, I won't get rid of it, but it'll look good. Is that?
Yeah,
They're like, no,
yeah.
sir. Still, it doesn't work.
Because I can imagine. What about those dudes with like the massive, like Rick Ross level beards?
Oh yeah.
What are they doing?
The mass is just sitting like out here. You know? Yeah.
It's not doing anything.
No, not at all.
What the fuck are they doing?
You got to wear like a whole face covering, like
sheet.
a whole, maybe a helmet. Like you just have to wear a motorcycle
like
helmet,
like a
space,
white pillow
like a
sheet?
spice helmet. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess. Right now that might be relevant. I was thinking more like I saw a guy that was wearing a watermelon on his head, so he didn't have a mask. He cut holes in it and hollowed it out. I saw it do with a pumpkin too. It was just like, all right, I guess you're doing
That's
it.
pretty funny.
You're doing something.
Yeah.
They said cover your face. They're doing it.
You know what the first war is gonna be? It's gonna be between the people who wear masks and the people who don't.
Oh yeah,
the
there's
looks
already,
I get
yeah.
when I go into public when I don't wear my mask, bro. And then here's the fucked up thing. And I know as a person who constantly tries to understand himself, I know this is a very immature, bias I have, but the more people look at me that way, the more it makes me want to do the thing I'm doing.
Yeah,
and I know that's
I didn't
not,
start
that's
wearing
not
it
right
until it was required, and every time I went out, I felt like I was getting dirty looks from people. It's like, don't wear them healthy. If I cough, it's because I smoke sometimes. All right, just calm down. Like I had something in my throat. Is that all right? It's weird too. Like now when we went to pick up that we got a rowing machine for free from this old couple that didn't need it. And we went to pick it up, and right when I got out of the car, I had the urge to cough, and I was like, "God damn it!" Like we were only there for like 2 minutes, literally. They already had it at the garage. We just loaded it up and left. But I was just like, just holding it until I got in the car. I was like, ugh. It's just
you don't want to freak them out.
I didn't, yeah. And they're an older couple too. They're in their 60s.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I gotta make sure I don't. I was just choking myself to not like be seen as that sick guy that's being around people and endangering them. But yeah, I don't know. I feel just better that people are out doing shit. Every time I think of like what I'm saying, I'm thinking of everything that's happening across like cities in the United States right now. And I'm like, people are out doing things. They're out, they're out doing things. Pastimes. There's pastimes that are being done right now, group activities. So I've recently like anytime I have a question for something on the internet and normally find a Reddit page that someone's already asked the fucking question, and you just read the comments and somebody's got an answer, or there's multiple answers you can use. And it's like, this is the best. I finally started using it on my phone as like I'm going to join a couple different communities on there and see what they have. Mm-hmm. I recently found the Richmond one, the RVA one. And
nice.
yesterday, they demolished the old Dominion Power Building in Richmond, and it was
my guy that worked at CDW, my old roommate worked there.
Oh, really? He wasn't in the building, right?
Okay. But he used to work for them. And
so there are all these like the way this started is I had no idea that was happening. Like we're not close enough to the city to hear a demolition like that, but it was. I mean, obviously it was loud as shit. They blew it up. But my cousin sent me a text yesterday morning saying, Did you all know? Like, was there a demolition this morning? And I Googled it immediately because I was already awake, and I was like, yeah, it looks like they demolished it. It looked pretty cool. I'll watch the video. And he was like, well, they didn't close all the right roads. He drove through the tunnel on, I think it's 195, going through the city that's like right under where they demolished the building. And he's in the tunnel when all this smoke and dust and debris just rolls into the tunnel. And he sent us that video from him driving his truck to work yesterday morning. And I was just like, I didn't know. I thought it was just a video he found. And he was like, no, that was me. That was like, I drove it through that this morning. And then he sent us an aerial video of the demolition. And like 1 minute, he was like, check 1 minute in. And all of a sudden, like there's this cloud of dust everywhere. And out of the tunnel emerges this little white truck. And it was him. And we were like, what the fuck? That's so crazy. But like, just because of that, I decided to join the RVA Reddit because there was all these people. Apparently, it was a big deal yesterday. People went and watched like from other buildings really early in the morning, and like there's all these videos that it looks like they're super close, but they're not. And that's when I found out that people were also protesting and or rioting in Richmond too. And just the RVA one, I've been just scrolling through, and you can see. And it's like I don't have any other social media that I get on, so this is. I mean, it's a social media, but it's also like a collection of the entire internet almost. Like people are taking a picture and posting it right to there, and then there's a super long discussion happening about it that, at least on Reddit, to me, the discussions seem to be a little more civil and discourse-like. I don't know. Compared to what I experienced back in the day on Facebook and stuff. But now that I've discovered it, I was like, holy shit, I had no idea this was happening here as well. But yeah, it's just... Reddit's cool, and there's riots happening. That's the point of that statement. So it's wild.
It is pretty crazy, and so I know we plan to talk today about psychedelics and our experiences with them and how they've impacted our life.
Oh, completely forgot about that.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that was the route this podcast was supposed to go.
We can't go that way right
now. I think given what's going on, it's almost mandatory that we talk about it. So I basically I'll ask you, what are your thoughts on the situation? I know there's multiple situations. There's a white woman in the park who calls her police on that black dude for bird watching because he tells her to put a leash on the dog. I know there's the guy who was killed by police in Minneapolis. Then there's the guy in Georgia a couple weeks ago. So I guess
that we even talked about what is his name? Ahmaud Arbery. We talked about it last time. I think we talked about it like right at the end, just kind of briefly, because all the stuff hadn't even come out about it yet. But yeah, since then, like you said, multiple people have been killed by police. Breonna Taylor, did you hear about that one too?
I did not.
They thought they were serving a warrant on the right apartment.
Oh yes,
they weren't. And this guy owned a gun, and he thought someone was breaking in. He shot at cops. Then they shot back like 20 times or something and killed the girlfriend of the guy. Yeah, and it wasn't even like they weren't even going after him. It was just the wrong house. But damn. Yeah, I mean, in terms of my thoughts on it, I mean, it's weird because I've spoken to one of my parents about it, and I already know their reactions as older white people, like what their reactions are going to be about it. Like, well, this isn't productive. This is not what you should do to get your point across. Like, you should be peaceful about it, those type of things. But it's just, I mean, it comes from lack of understanding, but also just, growing up in a different time, I think, as well. But in my eyes, it's like, one, what has peaceful protest ever really gotten? I mean, this still happens constantly all the time, in terms of people of color being killed by police officers. At least it seems to happen more now because we have videos of it more now. But in terms of the protests, I mean, it's hard to have an opinion on one side or the other of it, because for one, yes, protests, riot even, and I don't even like destroying stores and setting fire to things. I think that is just like the comments on a YouTube video or something, that there are negative ones, but most of them are positive. But the negative ones are going to rise to the top. Those are going to be the ones you see. Those are going to be the ones that everyone else is judged by, kind of. So, I mean, it takes one person to set a fire. But the entire group of people protesting in that city at that time are going to be blamed for that fire. If you see what I'm saying. But it's like, I don't necessarily, I can't. But it's also it's a I guess double-edged sword there, because it's also like the cop that kneeled on the guy's neck, terrible, should be charged with murder, but that's not all cops. It's the same situation, you know. It's like you can't hold every single person to the standard of the ones that completely fuck it up for everybody else, but you still have to be accountable for when that does happen.
Yeah, and just seeing you trying to work through it, like, obviously it's so complex. It's just like, I want to say this, because I'm the exact same way. I want to take one side at one point, then I want to take another side at the other. And for me, I typically, my overall approach to this entire thing is, it starts with, I can't mentally play a part in this game, because I've given these statistics before, but I'll give them again. So something like on the high end, like 3,000-ish people get killed by police in a given year, and that's on the high end.
Yeah.
And a majority of those people are white. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Black, Hispanics, and Asian. And then of those, you got to parse out which ones were the police completely justified, mm-hmm. where the other person had a weapon and they had a search warrant, blah, blah, and they killed him. And it was anybody who looked at it like, yeah, he came at the cop with a gun. They got shot. Okay, of course. I guarantee you, that's the majority of the police shootings that people die.
And I mean, you don't hear about a lot of those, to tell you the truth. Like, there's not a lot of videos of those, I feel like, because people don't feel the need to put those out, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you're right about that. And so, okay, so then now we have let's assume that every one of those 3,000 was killed by the police out of cold-blooded murder, and mm-hmm. all of them deserve to be in jail. What's 3,000 divided by 350 million, which is the population in our country? That isn't an abysmally low number. Mm-hmm. And the coverage of things like this makes Black people walk around thinking that they can at any moment in their life be killed, and it is a very likely event that may happen. But when you look at the statistical probability of a Black man getting killed by the police, it's less than 1%. Mm-hmm. So to me, and then the fact that there are innocent white people and people of other races who do get killed by the police, but the media almost never, ever, ever, ever covers them. So I have to ask myself, why? Why is it more advantageous for the media to cover a Black man getting killed by the police, other than why when a white man or an Asian man gets killed by the police, why don't we have the same and equal amount of coverage? So all of those things combined make me go, I understand that it is an absolute tragedy, and anyone losing their life for any reason to me is a tragedy. But I cannot live my life walking around. That's like me walking around in Arkansas being scared of a shark attack. The odds are equivalent. It's just abysmally low. And for you to walk around with that on your mind as a Black person is doing you a great disservice. And then my last point is, when you then have that in your mind, then it alters your interactions with cops, because now you are more on edge, which in turn will make a cop more on edge. And every time people are on edge and there's a gun in the equation, that makes for a very dangerous and explosive situation.
Yeah, I agree.
That's pretty much where that's pretty much where I stand. It's just
it's
amplified to
So what do you? All right, so. Media, yeah, but I mean, media is, it's such a broad word.
see the CNNs, the Facebooks.
Yeah, but
the
I mean, I don't
MSNBCs,
specifically. I know a lot of people our age do not tune into those networks anymore. They're not going to those websites. They're reading stories from other places, and I would think that they don't play as much of a role in that. I mean, yes, right now there's nothing else happening except for the country opening back up. So with this coming out right at the same time, I feel like it was just inevitable in terms of like a boiling point, like it boiled over kind of. But what do you think about the actual protests themselves in terms of, because I believe, previously on here, you've talked about how with protests, specifically like what I said earlier, there's not a lot that gets done during peaceful protests in terms of change.
Mm-hmm. For me, I'm more, as I've said multiple times, MLK is my idol, and his stance was peace first. Under very extreme confidences, is violent even necessary? So I tend to lean towards peaceful protest, because if we look at the history of our country, for the most part, things have been peacefully accomplished. And there is a difference between the 50s and the 2000s. The progress that black folks have made has been quite significantly with the civil rights movement and all the foundation and work that people like Martin Luther King did back in those days, and they did it peacefully. And we have gotten a lot from that. Like, look how many free, successful black men there are. I don't typically see the progress made from especially destroying stores in your own communities. These are not stores that white people or cops are using. These are stores that, after all this has died down, you're going to have to go back to that Target and look for the things you need, but it won't be there. So those are the issues that I have. Like, there's a way to get your point across without destroying your own property. It just doesn't really make any sense.
So at what point did that become the standard then? Because up until maybe the early 60s, the standard was, if you are not violent, they will just put you right back where they had you before. In terms of, there were multiple uprisings, whether that be with slaves or after the fact, when, the suppression of black people in the United States just after slavery ended, but basically between 1860 and 1960. So, I mean, during those times, peaceful protest was a thing, but at the same time, almost every one of them turned into violence, because it was just because
against the people.
Well, on both sides. I mean, maybe that's just because it was a different time. I mean, when was this again? What is it called? The Boston Massacre. I know that it was 1770, but still, it's just like that was nothing. In terms of that being that was a peaceful protest where they just straight up shot all the protesters. And it was just like, okay, well, maybe we got to bring guns next time, or at least, do this in a different way. So there's so many aspects to this that it's like, okay, if you go out and you demand justice and nothing happens, then what do you do?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I mean, for all the, what was it, like the early 2000s, even like early like 2010s, there were, I feel like there were multiple, kind of right when social media was getting huge, right? There were so many videos of people getting killed by police officers, and then those police officers never being convicted of anything. And a lot of them were, okay, this guy didn't have a gun, this girl didn't have a gun, they didn't have anything, and they still were killed. And so it's like, if you go out, you protest that, and nothing happens, what's the next course of action, I guess? What do you do after that? You just keep protesting? And I don't know. It's just, it's all questions in my mind. There's no answers whatsoever for any of it. Because I also see, like, and you don't know what to believe here, but that the Minnesota's state government, I think, was saying that they have evidence that points to outside instigators coming in and setting fire to things, basically to make the bomb explode. Yeah, and it's just like, well, shit, if that happens, how do you determine whether that happened or whether it was, okay, this 18-year-old kid who's got a lot of pent-up aggression because he's fucking 18 years old just threw a flaming beer bottle into a store or something. It's like, how do you find the difference? And I also see that too, and it's just like, I think a lot of the people out there protesting initially are the ones that are quick to get outside, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, whoever, because you see all sorts of people out in the streets. I feel like it's younger people, you know, like the really young people. One, they don't have shit to do right now. They don't have shit to do. 16 to 25 age range, or maybe even younger than that, 22. Yeah, what the fuck? There's no school right now. There's no jobs for a lot of people. It's like, well, let's go out. And also, I mean, the mob mentality, once a group of people gets together and starts thinking as like a one group, that can be very positive in certain ways. But also can have detrimental effects. It's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around any of it, but also it's when someone picks one side, it's hard for me to not be okay with it, but just like, I don't understand how someone can pick a side. Even if you're saying, well, they shouldn't protest like this, or the cops shouldn't kill like that, or, you know, they shouldn't kill, period, but they shouldn't police like that. It's like, goddamn, it's just devil's advocate in my head. It's just like a revolving door of answers from, well, but what about this? But what about this?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it literally, if you are a thoughtful person, you're, as you pointed out, to pick a side would indicate no thought. Yeah. So because
a gut reaction,
even though
that would be indicative of that. Yeah.
Right. So because like even I don't agree with burning down your own neighborhoods and looting and rioting, but on the same token, if you genuinely feel, you know, if you have bought into the narrative that black men are out here getting killed in droves by the police, and you really haven't read into it and done further research, and you hold that in your head as a truth, oh, I fucking completely get you going out and destroying shit. Like, of course. And I completely agree that sometimes violence is necessary. Now, do I think every other option should be explored extensively first? 1000%. But I completely get that at sometimes violence is the only option left, and you got to act appropriately. But I'm on this. I'm leaning towards, I don't think that is true for this situation. And I'm open to hearing somebody say it is, but they rioted and did all this Black Lives Matter in Ferguson what was your goal? What did you necessarily accomplish? What was the purpose? Because a lot of those people did all of that, and they're right back in the same neighborhoods, shopping at the same stores they burned down.
But here's the thing. It's like, especially when cops get let off for something like this, how can statistics ever be accurate as to unjust or just police killings? Not just of black people, of anyone. How could, because it's not fact-based, it's opinion-based. It's the judge's or jury's decision, and they're fucking flawed people, which is just like, it's just a bad circle that's going to continue, and I have no idea how it gets fixed. But I'd be interested to see between the races, what is the most, like I said, the stats can't be right, but what race is the most unjustly killed? I mean, obviously it's been, I feel like it's been proven, I have no stats to back it up, but that black people are targeted more than other races by police officers for not necessarily killing, but for policing, for arresting, for pulling over, for stopping. I mean, the whole stop and frisk thing that New York had forever. It's just like, isn't that proven? Isn't that something that certain police stations had in effect in terms of actually policing the black communities more than other communities just based on a racial bias?
Okay, so you're 100% right. For non-lethal interactions with the police, blacks and Hispanics are targeted significantly more than whites are. That is proven statistically.
Wait, you said non-what? Non-violent?
Non-lethal. Non-lethal,
okay.
Yeah. Those interactions with cops are for blacks and Hispanics are much higher than for whites, for sure. That has been proven. And I'll send you the Yale study done on
Okay.
this. Yep, but also they also point out though when it comes to and I'll there's a contrast to lethal force. So, and I'll read you the exact quote from this peer-reviewed article. It says, "In stark contrast to non-lethal uses of force, we find no racial differences in officer-involved shootings on either the extensive or the intensive margins. Using data from Houston, Texas, where we have both officer-involved shootings and randomly chosen set of potential interactions with police where lethal force may have been justified, we find in the raw data that blacks are 23.8% less likely to be shot at by police relative to whites. Hispanics are 8.5% less likely. Both coefficients are statistically insignificant."
Is that because there's more white people and therefore more white people committing crimes and therefore more police interactions with white people committing crimes and therefore more shooting? That's at least how I think of it as soon as you say something like that. Also, it makes me think of shootings as the only statistic taken into account there, because there's obviously, what was the Freddie Gray? The guy thrown in the back of the police van. They said he basically broke his neck or something like that. Not a shooting, but he was definitely, he died in police custody because of how that it was handled. I'd also be interested to see that.
Yeah, because and these are Yale researchers, so I can send you the whole thing. It's a 62-page peer-reviewed article, but they control for all of those things you listed. They control for all of those things. It wouldn't be a Yale research project if they didn't. You know what I mean? It's so, and they were taking into account lethal force, so they included tasers and lethal is tasers and guns. You can't really. The Freddie Gray one would be murky because
what about the one that the riot started over? He choked a guy to death.
Yeah, that's lethal force. So,
but I thought you said shooting, right?
Yeah,
because that would be considered in the police handbook or whatever non-lethal force. I would think.
Yeah, you're
so
probably
that would
right,
be under the non-lethal statistic. It's just it's so skewed, and it's also it makes me think. Okay. What are the I can look it up, but how many cops are white compared to how many cops are other races? How many how many of those white cops are then racist, I guess? Or how many of those even unconsciously police black people in a more physical or more violent way than they would the same white person or a white person, of the same age?
That's a good question.
Because it's not something you could ever find out, and especially like the cop's not going to be like, "Yeah, I'm super racist." Like he's not gonna. I'm racist as they get.
So I would venture to say, first of all, I would say well over 90%, 95% of I would say plus 95% of police interactions go swimmingly. Nothing happens. Everything goes fine. The overwhelming majority go without a hitch. And I've had like 3 or 4 interactions with police in the last year in a predominantly white town, and they have let me go every single time. Haven't gotten one ticket. I just treated them with respect. They treated me with respect back. And what do you know? It went well. And I tell minorities of all sorts, even maybe it doesn't apply as much to whites, but when you have a problem with a police officer, the time to address that problem is not while he has a gun on his hip. It's in court later. That's where we go to resolve our issues. It's not on the scene of where the cops already in a very tense situation. And then to your other point about do cops, are they prejudiced against blacks or Hispanics? And I ask you this, wouldn't it make sense to police different populations differently? For example, black people make up 13% of the population, and they make up a huge chunk of all the murders committed. And matter of fact, you can't even take the 13% into account. You have to cut that in half because most murders are committed by men. Black men make up something like 7% of the population, and they commit a huge percentage of the murders. So for you to police another group the same way you would police the group that is committing most of your heinous crime, that wouldn't make sense from a logical perspective.
Yeah, but it's at the same time, it's a numbers game if you play it like that. But at the same time, then that's just I mean, that's stereotyping every person you come into contact with to say, okay, well, most of the criminals are like you. I'm going to arrest first and ask questions later type thing because you could be dangerous, and therefore let me just go ahead and take that precaution right now. I mean, that's Minority Report type shit right there. Like knowing someone's propensity for crime before they even do type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand the very slippery slope that argument is on. I completely concede that point, but I think of it from like the fact that we are flawed human beings, and we do have to make these shortcuts mentally in order to live a normal existence. Because if most of my encounters with white people go well, and then most of my encounters with black people, my life is on the line, I am going to change how I perceive both of those people, not because they are black or white, but the circumstances are dictating how I mentally make these shortcuts in my brain. So I don't think these cops start out as I'm racist and I'm going to police black and Hispanic people differently. It's they get in they're so,
but
for sure.
I get what you're saying. Let me make that very clear.
That there's definitely racist cops out there.
Outliers.
1,000% correct. but I would venture to say most cops are like, I don't give a fuck what color you are. But when they go into a situation after situation after situation, it's like, all right, whites, they're drunk, they're acting stupid. I'm arresting college-age white girls for dumb shit, blah, blah, blah. Life never in danger. I'm going into black neighborhoods, arresting drug dealers, guns on their head. I'm going to act differently in those situations. And I'm not saying that that's how things are supposed to be, but I understand why they are that way just from a human perspective. Like, I would make the same mental shortcuts. There is a reason why I, as a black man, am more wary at night when I see a group of black dudes versus a group of white dudes. I act differently, and I'm a black guy saying that. And most black people, if they're honest, they feel the exact same way. And it's not because we're inherently racist. It's that we understand the probability of certain things happening with certain people. It's once you get into enough situations, you can't help but make these shortcuts in your brain. We do it with everything in our life, and we do it with people as well.
Yes, I agree with most of that. But I do have some alternate facts.
Let's go.
I don't know if that's a good way to put that because that sounds like they're untrue.
Yeah, no. Let's hear them.
Okay, so I found... I don't know, this is Statista.com, but a number of people shot to death by police in the United States. I just noticed that 2020 is almost non-existent, maybe up until the last week or so. But there's just like nobody's been out, so there's been nobody interacting with police. But Scientific America, this is just, I think this was last year when this came out. Yeah, it was the end of last year.
I've seen that. I think it's from 2019,
Yeah, the end of 2019. And I guess it's talking about how there's so many sites with police shooting or interaction statistics now because of all the social media coverage of it back in the like 2012, 2013. And they found the sites that put together an aggregate of all the stats in terms of make sure, fact check them, make sure everything's right, and then put together, the data points. Because it does say that obviously white people are killed like at a much higher or more total white people are killed by police than black people.
They make 60% of the population. So naturally that's going to make sense.
Where am I at here? Is that the right one? Oh, here it is. Because there's two different ones, mappingpoliceviolence.org and then fatalencounters.org. They're like the two mapping websites now. Mm-hmm. And black people are 3 times more likely to be killed by police than white people. Mm-hmm. That's what this says in terms of the stats. It says, I guess it's, what does that say? A recent analysis suggests that about 96 black men per 100,000 are at risk of being killed by police, more than twice the risk of white men. So that's what this is saying. Obviously, it's also weird because it says black men, or it might just be black people. I don't know if this is black men. Black people are more likely to be unarmed, 1.3 times more likely to be unarmed compared to white people in terms of those interactions. I feel like there's a disparity there though with like armed white people being treated in a very respectful manner out in public, but maybe not necessarily that same thing for an armed black person. I mean, it just comes to mind when those. Did you see like it was like a month ago when all the people went to Subway in like South Carolina and the dude had a fucking rocket launcher on his goddamn back and like 2 guns on his hips and like everybody's got an AK on their back and he had a tank gun. Dude had a tank gun walking in with a flag sticking out the end of it. And it's just like, it's, everything's treated fine. They have these mass destructive weapons out there in public. That's fine. But I don't know. I see that. It seems like there's more of a respect there when white people are much more likely to have a firearm on them at any given time. At least in the United States.
I agree.
We got a lot of fucking guns.
Yeah, we have a ton. And I agree with you, man. If that was a group of black dudes, that would not have gone down the way. That's why
Why do we have 120 guns per 100 people in the United States?
That's just the country we are, man.
That's so wild.
It's just nuts, man.
Everybody got 1.2 guns.
Yeah. But like, I definitely got to stress, man, that I completely agree that like there are different white and like black perceptions. And Asian perceptions are definitely different. I agree, man. Like there is no question that racism exists. It is real. I'm just trying to make the case, I guess, on a more macro level of one, we've made a ton of progress. So we have to take a minute and smell the roses of the progress we made. And we can't let a few instances of black people seemingly dying innocently try to negate all of the progress we've made in the past few decades. Now, all of those deaths are 100% a tragedy. And if they were killed innocently, I would hope our criminal justice prevails and something is done. But to then say America is as racist in 2020 as it was in 1940 because of an incident like this is unfair to the Martin Luther Kings, the fucking Fred Hampton.
I don't think it like takes away from that progress at all.
But that's the argument people try to make is that, we are just as racist today because of this. Look, here's proof that we're just as racist today. That's
another
what
like
I've been seeing and hearing. Like that is the narrative.
That's like a Kobe versus Jordan argument. Like you can't like there's no way to know the answer to that question. It's just the divisive question that makes people upset. I don't think there is. It's like
we're much less
as
people today.
As people, are we less racist than we were 70 years ago?
The answer has to be yes.
Our laws are less racist. But
the answer has to be as people that yes we are.
But
it has to be.
I can't answer that because I don't know. I have no idea. There's more people now, like a lot fucking more than there were in 1940. Like the baby boom happened right after 1940, and there's a shit ton of those people, and a lot of them are white, and a lot of them were born to parents that pre-civil rights movement. So it's like, so we'll say one racist. This is hypothetical completely. Not everyone's racist. I get it. One racist parent, two racist parents have in the baby room. They have 5 kids, and they grow up to all follow in their parents' footsteps. And a lot of people end up being as their parents are in terms of that's their teachers. So it's just not something where I can agree or disagree. It's just. It's an unknown because we don't know all people, and it's the same stuff happens now that happened then in terms of people getting killed. So it's like, how do you justify that it's less racist or more racist?
I think
like from either side. Like I know you're saying it's less, but how do the people that's saying it's more? How do they even justify that it's more or just as? How do they?
I think it's fairly evident. I think you look at what you're presented with historically. You look at the polling of questions that would signify people being racist, and you look at those questions asked 40 years ago and those questions asked today. Huge. There's a significant difference in people's perceptions of African Americans and minorities. And then you look at events such as the election of a black president. That is completely within everybody's rights. If America was as racist, there's nothing to stop white people from being like, I never vote for a black man, and overwhelmingly just voting for Hillary. And then we'd be like, okay, that's your choice. It's personal.
But that's
nobody knows how you voted. Nobody's standing behind you at a polling booth saying,
but that's saying every white person
person
would be racist in that situation. It's like it can never be either or. It can never be none of them or all of them. It's just an unknown number that you'll never know unless someone comes out and says, yes, I'm racist. But during Obama's administration, so many people fucking hated him just because he was black. Because he was black.
Of course there are. And I'm not making the argument for racism being non-existent. I'm making the argument for racism being so much less than it was 40 years ago. And these are the things that prove it. Sure, a lot of people were against Obama, but not only did Obama win the Electoral College, he won the popular vote by a fucking landslide.
As you said before, it's not necessarily about their race. It's about their money and the money that can be made. So I think a lot of people, whether they like black people or not, saw the situation as he's going to make us a lot of money. He is a good person to have in our corner as a president. Yeah, but that majority of people is so small. There's also a lot less violence in terms of perpetrated in the name of racism now, at least in the open. So it's like, yes, maybe it's a less violent racist time, but maybe people are now more internalizing that racism and not actually acting on it. That's still racism.
Can I ask you this question? If the racism has switched from external and keeping people from jobs and killing people and it's internal, who the fuck cares? Honestly, like, does it matter?
Well,
if you're still going to vote for a black guy, if you're going to let black people get jobs
racism,
and advance in society, think about it. If all the markers of racism are disappearing, who the fuck gives a crap if the guy in his house is racist? I don't care.
What are the markers of racism, though?
That people being
white hoods
held
and
back,
burning crosses.
Yeah, that's one of
but
many. Black people being
held back. You wouldn't say that's
held back from jobs.
Still happening.
Black people being
happens to everyone. Period. Like women to Asian people to pregnant women, just old people. People are still judged constantly. We're humans. We constantly judge each other immediately. When someone says, don't judge me, it's not possible because you judge everything every single second of your life. And that some people maybe can't help it. That's just how they are. They're racist. But I wouldn't say that if they're not doing anything about it, that doesn't make them any less racist.
I'm not saying it makes them less racist. I'm saying it doesn't matter because, like, even if you're sexist, so what?
Like, if we don't hear from them, great. But at the same time, you're saying it's disappeared or it's less than it was then, and I'm saying it's not measurable.
Certainly,
I'm not saying I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it's not a measurable thing. There's no statistics.
Take, for example, would you make what about women? Have women made? Is the discrimination against women the same today as it was 50 years ago?
In some men's minds, yes. In probably a lot of men's minds. I don't know. I can't.
And I'm making the argument that doesn't matter. I'm making the argument that matters. And here's why. What matters
you asked the question.
Is what. No, yeah. But what I'm saying to you is like, I meant it more in like, is there proof that women are in a different capacity and have made far more advances in the past 50 years? And you cannot say no to that. Look at they are making the overwhelming majority, not overwhelming, but they are the majority of people who graduate college. They are now the majority of the workforce. They earn significantly more money than they did in 50 years ago. Women have made significant improvements in life because we have adjusted our laws in order to accommodate that. So what if you're stuck in the past mentally from 50 years ago and don't think a woman should be CEO? Guess what? You can't stop her. And that's what matters.
Yeah, laws have changed, but I'm saying people's mindset hasn't necessarily done that. I mean, I think every group of people, at least in the United States, has come up from 50 years ago. I don't think anyone's in a technically worse spot as humans, I guess, than 50 years ago. That's evolution. We evolved to be better than we were before, but that doesn't mean we're going to hate a group that's different from us any less than we did before. It's seems like an inherent trait in humans. Racism. It seems very inherent, not just in white people, not just in black people or Hispanics. People hate people that are different than them. It's been that way for fucking ever. And just because we're going to have new laws that let people do better things and have better things in life, that doesn't mean that's ever going away. I mean, you could say that about the United States, but then you look at anywhere else in the world where someone's trying to come in that's not from that country, that someone's trying to immigrate, and because they're different, they're immediately ostracized, they're fucking, murdered, there's violence perpetrated against them, women are raped, and it's just like, those things will last forever. Yes, we can put little like, oh yeah, you can get a better job now, cool, but don't walk home alone at night still, because men are the fucking worst. Like, it's the same shit that has been going on for the history of humanity. It's just that now we've evolved a little more to make it easier, I guess, for people in some way, but I don't think it's necessarily the mindset of humans has changed.
Kind of sounds like you're making my argument for me, because I'm telling you that it's never gonna. I'm not saying that. What is your goal? 100% non-racism, 100% non-sexism. That's not the goal. So we're in agreement that there's always going to be a level of sexism. There's always going to be a level of racism. There's always going to be a level of tribalism. All of these things will exist into infinity. But what we can do is we can implement laws that help at least loosen up that grip that people have on these ideologies and allow people that no matter what another person thinks about them, they can still make certain achievements in life. That's what matters. What matters is the outcome. What matters is the product of the laws that we've implemented. So what if people still hold some outlandish historical views? It doesn't matter if I, as a black man, could still go to a job interview and get hired on my merits. Then it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
to
you.
Desk A thinks.
It doesn't matter to you, but it matters to.
Then who should it matter to then?
Anyone, everyone. It's not. You're saying that we're in a better spot with women's rights and with racism.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Women have rights now, and black people have more rights now. But that doesn't mean there's any less racism or sexism or whatever else you want to call it. That doesn't mean any of that's gone away. It's inherent in humans. I'm not making your argument for you. I'm arguing completely in the fucking middle of it that those aren't statistics that are available. Is the world less racist than it was? You can't fucking know that. You would have to poll every fucking person and go super in depth to their history and their parents and their ancestors and what happened to them and all the limitations on that. It's just not possible.
So you're saying that's the only way to get a measurement of less sexism and less racism is we have to poll each person individually on an extremely personal level to find out whether they're truly sexist or racist?
Yes, because those are opinion-based. Those are opinion-based feelings. There's no facts involved in racism or sexism. There's laws that are passed. Yes, if you want to call those facts, yeah, they're in law. They are laws now, but that doesn't make things less racist.
Okay, but then let's talk about socially. White people have no obligation to be friends with black people.
Correct.
Why are the relations with black people much more now than they were 50 years ago? You wouldn't say
because
that's a marker
there are some
less
people
racism?
that are humans, and there's other people that belong to the tribe of whatever they want to. People will spread off always into individual groups. Some people can mingle with other groups. Some people cannot. It's constantly going to happen. I don't think that makes any difference in this case, though.
Yeah, but the amount of interracial marriage, and not just between white and black.
It wasn't allowed.
Black and every other
race. This shit wasn't allowed for the
right.
longest time.
Okay. All right. But now that it's allowed, it's not mandated that you have to do it. It is still a choice. And a lot more people are making that choice. That's all I'm saying, is that it's not going to be every 50-50, but there are certainly more interracial marriages, more friends that are white, black, and in between. That signifies something. All I'm saying is that it doesn't signify everything, but certainly it signifies something.
You're saying that once they had the choice to marry interracially, they did.
Yeah,
yes,
so some people...
I agree, but that means that, yes, unlimited more people get married interracially after it was legal than before it was.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that they now that they have the choice, if they were just still this racist society that didn't, its views never shifted. It's not like once it was legal to marry a black person that they said you had to. It was still up to the choice of the individuals whether to or not marry a black man or woman. And they still made the decision to do it in droves, and it keeps growing. So it's not because so that signifies that at least on some level, views towards interracial marriage, white people being with black people, Asians, whatever, those things are slowly dissipating. Is it going to happen overnight? And will it ever be 0% racism? No. But if your goal is for 0% anything, then your goal is bad. You could just try to at least create the environment.
I don't think that's the goal.
Where that stuff doesn't have an effect on people.
I don't think that zero judgment or stereotyping or racism is ever I mean,
it can't be the goal.
It can't be, because it's not possible. And that's what I'm saying, that just because I'm not willing to give credit to the last 50 years of innovation and law changes and things like that, because 50 years is the smallest fucking time frame it's not that small, but we've been around for, I don't know, 100,000 years, something like that, maybe a little longer. And that's such a small fucking piece of where we've gotten to. Okay, we can make these laws so that people won't hurt one another just because they're different from one another. That is amazing. But the fact that they had to put that shit in place means that people don't do that shit on their own. It means that they had to be forced to do it. And from that force, yes, maybe some people have gone the opposite way and like, okay, my whole family's been this way. Fuck that. I interact with other people. I'm good. But there's probably just as many people that have gone the complete opposite way. And it's just in my brain, there's no way to wrap my head around one way or the other. I'm going to sit on the fence on this forever because this sample size is so small. And just because we have technology and the ability to communicate more with one another, yeah, maybe we understand one another a little more, but I still don't think that takes away from the inherent human quality of being scared or hating the things that are different from you.
Evolution is force. Evolution is not choice. People are forced into changing almost 100% of the time. So yes, that's what it does take. It does take us as a people recognizing that, hey, if we leave each other to our own motherfucking devices, guess what? We will probably hate people who look, act, and talk differently from us, try our best to keep them out of our neighborhoods and da-da-da-da-da. That's our default setting. Okay, we understand that. We are smarter than the monkeys, though. So guess what? Let's force people into understanding that just because somebody looks different from you, acts different from you, has a dick instead of a vagina, that doesn't mean that they're subhuman, that they're still the exact same creature you are. And through that forcing and that understanding, being thrust into that situation, do you know how many I have lived around racist people? And by the end of it, guess what? The realization on both of our ends that, oh shit, dude, you're not just a dumbass redneck. I see why you believe the things you do. I don't agree with, and literally the exact same thing happening on their end, because we were thrust into a situation where we had no control. We had no choice but to figure out how to make the thing work. And that's how humans are. And that's the point I'm trying to make to you, that, yeah, people are going to hold backwards. I'm sure we hold backwards beliefs right now that in the future people are going to look back and say that was stupid. But through laws and things that we implement, we're going to be forced out of these archaic ways of thinking, just like the people of the past have been. I've talked to old white men who used to hate black people, but then after things got loosened up and they had no choice but to interact with them, a good chunk of the ones I talk to are like, yeah, I thought that way because that's just how people thought back then. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any black people. But now I'm like, oh shit, they're just like me. And that's how progress happens. It's not this overnight thing, but 50 years it means something. It means something. And we are not
agree.
in the same place we were 50 years ago.
I'm very proud of just people in general that in the last 50 years they've come up in terms of believing that humans are all equal. But at the same time, yes, some have, but I think just as many have not. It doesn't, like, think about all the people, and we've gone over this before, like, the government telling you what to do, a lot of people fucking hate that shit. So any law put in the 60s, those people that are still alive, that were still racist then, I just don't see it going away ever, even with laws, and because a law just, it's not going to change who a person is. Like, yeah, they won't murder because murder's illegal, but they still want to murder. And maybe they still will murder. Like, it's
as long as they don't murder. As long as they don't murder, that's all that matters. And
okay, in murder statistics, yes, that's a bad example by me. But in race, there's no racism statistics. Very good point. And I even looked up, tried to find racism statistics, and it's just not a thing.
Trying to find racism.
It's because it's all opinion based, and it's like you can, and I can't even take this. I can take it with multiple grains of salt, but it's just like the survey on, what is the Pew Research Center, Social and Demographic Trends. Ugh, I'm hungry. Sorry, my stomach just growled. Most black adults have negative views about the country's racial progress. And it's just like, okay, well, it's just like, you don't have that view, but this survey taken in February of 2019, most of the American black people that they surveyed have that view. So it's just, like I said, there's no way to measure it, because it's like, who did you interview here? It wasn't everybody, but if it was everybody, wouldn't we have a much better view of this shit? Mm-hmm. I mean, you know what they should start doing? Putting these type of questions on the fucking census. People are answering the shit out of that.
Great.
I just had to do that. Yeah. I mean, just write, hey, rate these races from 1 to 5, how you feel about them. 1 being greatly hate, and 5 being love like anyone else. I mean, those are how job interviews are, at least. Yeah, but it's just, I completely understand your side, but I can't agree with it, because I don't agree with that side or the opposite side. I can't give it to either side.
Yeah, I mean, of course I completely understand your side, because have I run into white people who think backwards as fuck if they're still stuck in the 20s? Of course, man. I mean, I think every minority can say that to be true, but my whole position is there was a time where almost every white person I ran into would feel that way. But if I was placed back in the 20s, every white person would feel that way, and they would act that way towards me. Cut to 80 years later, most of the white people I run into have no issue with a black person or a Spanish person or anyone of that race. So I'm just saying that has to signify something.
But that also depends on where you live too, right? Like it would depend on the area you are in the country. It really even would depend on the area you are within your state, I would say. Because like the more rural areas, who knows? I'm putting a stereotype on those people that live out in the country. But I mean, it just the same thing with this like poll. It said, and okay, another factor is like since Trump's been elected, because a lot of people have said, you know, since he's been elected, race relations have been worse. Since I mean, that's what this poll says. Most say it's now more common for people to express racist or racially insensitive views since Trump was elected. Right, 65% say it's more common, 29% say as common, and then 5% say less common. Mm-hmm. But it's just, I mean, it all depends on who's in office. It all depends on the country you're talking about, whether it's the United States or another country where there's huge racial divides. I mean, shit, there's countries where slaves still exist, right? I mean, they're not necessarily black people. Africa. Well, I know, but there's got to be other countries, right? Outside of that, or no? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure, but the latest ones we've heard about are from Africa.
But it's just, I don't know, man. And even in that, it's just like within that I would assume, because most of the people in Africa are black, it's black people enslaving other black people.
Yep.
So even in that, there's a difference there for some reason. There's a financial difference. There's some sort of cultural difference in terms of you grew up here, I grew up on this side of the country. So it's just, of
course.
I mean, that's why people probably hate talking to me about stuff like that. Even like and that's why I brought up the Kobe Michael Jordan thing, because people always try to debate it. It's like, all right, well, let's say you compare championships. Jordan has more. If you compare most of the stats, Jordan has more. But if they never once played against each other or played against the same opponents, really, I mean, they overlapped a tiny bit. But like, how can you legitimately compare them to each other with the same constants? I guess what we're taught in like basic science, like this is how you conduct an experiment on.
Yeah, you can't,
and it's fun to do though. It's fucking fun, like to debate people and just talk about like the Babe Ruth, greatest baseball player of all time. It was just white people playing, man. It was just white people. They didn't let nobody else in the league. What about all the other people that he could have played against? So it's just like having all those little factors can't make me. I just can't decide on one answer to things. And I think with all the protests and everything that's happening, that what we started talking about originally, that is why I can see both sides of that as well. Like, yeah, burning down Target's not great, but I think getting out there and protesting as a group is great. So it's just, I mean, kneeling on a guy's neck and killing him is not great, but saving someone from a guy with a gun to their head is great. Like, having cops is good for a reason, bad for others. So it's...
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on the cop debate, because I've run into a lot of cops in my life, and of course, like most people can say, overwhelmingly,
some are dicks, some are not.
So
a lot,
some are dicks,
most aren't.
Most of them are not.
Yeah, and it all depends on the people they're dealing with. Like you said,
anybody die innocently.
It depends on who they're dealing with. Not necessarily like different races, but I could talk to a cop fine beginning of the night, say on like Cary Street out in front of some of those bars. Cool, cops are cool. End of the night, everyone's wasted. You don't get near the cops. They're not trustworthy of anybody who's had drinks. Like, anything could happen to them. So it's like you see them dealing with different situations and reacting in hopefully the best way possible. And they're humans and they make mistakes and they fuck up and people get killed and they should be punished for it completely. But it's a very complicated issue. It's complicated.
And here's a lot of people say the reason cops don't get indicted is racism. But I was thinking about this the other day, and I think the reason cops don't get indicted is legal precedents. Because once you indict a cop, because that's how everything in the legal system works, right? Legal precedents. Like, what was the case before that is going to dictate how we deal with this case? That's why people who commit financial fraud and stuff get such light sentences. There's no legal precedence to it. So they're just operating in real time. Like, I guess this is 2 years. I guess this is 3. They don't really know. But legal precedence dictates a lot of how our criminal justice system works. So that being said, if you indict a cop for whatever reason, you're setting a legal precedence, and the naturally volatile nature of a policeman's job makes it so that the legal precedence you will set would completely alter the way police can and will do their jobs.
Couldn't they have
I think about it.
Couldn't they have a legal precedent that comes about because of footage recorded by bystanders or whoever?
It could be.
Because it's like, okay, well, if there's video footage, we're gonna fucking use that. If there's video footage of you doing this shit, we're gonna indict you. We're gonna charge you. But obviously, if it's he said, she said, no videos. But it's like nowadays, people pull fucking phones out for anything with a cop just because. And it's like, I mean, it's not necessarily for bad reason, because the shit has happened and been caught on video, and it still keeps happening. So it's that's why I don't see it.
Other direction.
That's why I don't necessarily see it getting better, because I see more of this happening. I mean, I hope something happens, but I see more of it happening because there's more phones in people's hands. There's video everywhere. There's cameras everywhere. Everything is connected at this point. I mean, you can have Wi-Fi in your, broadcast out of your vehicle at this point. Like, there's so many ways that police now can be put out on the internet, I guess, for when they're doing whatever. Hopefully, you would think that maybe policing standards change just in terms of dealing with unarmed people, especially if there's 10 cops standing around. But, it's hard to say.
Yeah, definitely the argument could be made for cops training, and there's a whole host of other things. But I always get back to the point of we know that there are innocent people of other races, much more so than black people, who get killed by the cops as well. And there is video footage of those as well. I just challenge people. Why do they show the one of the black guy only? Why don't they show the others? It's for very obvious reasons. It stokes the fire.
Well,
it gets more clicks. It gets more views. Which
yes, that's
more
why news media outlets do
purpose.
It. But at the same time, the reason people that aren't media put it out there, the reason they record the videos and put them on the internet, I mean, I'm sure they do it with white people as well, but the rage, I think, comes from the fact that the oppression of black people in the country. There's not oppression of white people in the country. And there never has been, really. So it's like, yes,
what about poor white people?
No, yeah, I don't think they're oppressed.
So, I mean, what's the difference? How could you tell whether someone's being oppressed or somebody's not being oppressed?
Well, I'm just saying
the poorest people in our country are white.
Well, yeah, but the history of what has happened to black people in this country in terms of being enslaved, as well as having specific laws in our Constitution against them. Like, that was not anyone else's problem but black people for a long time.
Fair.
So I'm thinking that it's still, and I've always thought that it's still you don't just catch up after, oh, cool, all right, we got same laws, we're good, we caught up. Like you said, like it's that you don't just catch up like that, and it's just that's not how it happens. So I think that when it comes to people getting outraged about it, it's almost like they're still not recovered from everything that's fucking happened prior to it, and it's just it kind of keeps snowballing. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, but here's the thing I have that's no longer America's fault. And this sounds pretty harsh. It's no longer white people's fault, America as an institution's fault. Why can't we hold black people accountable for their own actions? Because we have precedent to this, right? So we have a history of other races in this country who were severely oppressed and who are now the highest earners in our country. Take, for example, particularly Japanese. They are amongst the richest people. I think they make up the richest cohort of the richest demographic in America, or one of them. They're definitely richer than white folks on average. So, and they came from a place where we put them in internment camps. We discriminated against them. There were places that said no Japanese allowed. I mean, they went through a lot of the similar things that black folks did. How were they then in a time frame much quicker than black folks able to bounce back? It's because they had cultural beliefs and ideals that separated them from black people. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, at what point do we stop holding the legacy of black folks against them?
Couple things. So those ideals or cultural that they had, that you're saying, propelled them to the top of the financial status in the United States, like after they were in internment camps. Mm-hmm. I think Japan as a nation is really old, like really fucking old. And they have culture that goes way the fuck back. Maybe longer than most other nations. But I also think that they weren't brought over on slave ships to be slaves from Japan. I don't think. I'm not entirely sure.
The Chinese were, and they're up in there in the highest earners as well in our country.
I think they were indentured servants, though. I don't think they were slaves. They weren't brought here against their will. They were brought here.
Yes, they were. And then we bombed them. We put them in fucking mines to mine the railroads, and then blew up and killed so many Chinese people. We did some pretty horrible shit to Chinese people.
I don't think they were. Were they slaves?
Chinese people were.
I know indentured servitude is basically slavery, but what I'm saying is I think they chose to come here. It was immigration. It wasn't kidnapping, is what I'm saying.
I remember differently, but you could be. You're in front of a computer.
Yeah,
you could be
at
right.
first, only a handful of Chinese came, mainly as merchants, former sailors, to America. 1815 immigrants came, 1820s. Yeah, and so it was it was much later too. You know, obviously hundreds of years after African Americans, or you know, Africans technically, not African Americans, were brought here. And then with Japanese people, you know, just looking at the population statistics, like Asian make up 4.8% of the United States today. That's
very small population.
Not huge. Black people are only at 12.6. Also not 13%. Huge, but at the same time, I mean, you would think that majority of those people are descendants of slaves. I would no,
I don't think so. There's a lot of black people that immigrate, and then there's also, when you look at the statistical differences in amongst black people, you will see that people from West Africa, the Caribbeans, or just people who are African immigrants, they are higher earners than white people are. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, if the discrimination was that rampant and the ability to not get out of it was that difficult, then those people would come here and experience the same pitfalls, but they don't. And again, what's the main thing that this separates a West African from a black guy born in Brooklyn is their culture. Because visually, a cop, an employer, a friend, anybody cannot look at them and say, that's West African, that's Black American. The thing that separates those two people is their culture.
Agreed.
Which is why one on average does better than the other.
Okay, well, that also brings me to the next thing I was going to ask. So in terms of culture, what is the culture that was created in slavery? Like, what is that culture? Are there, other than survival, what are the positive things that you can even be handed down in that culture? Like, not forever, but immediately after becoming free, or, I mean, not being free for hundreds of years, but just how does that work in terms of, okay, people come from Japan, Africa, China, wherever, and they come directly here, not as descendants of slaves, but as descendants of people that were born in those countries that had the benefits of living in their own countries for the longest time, and then come here. As I said, I see it as like a snowball thing where it's like, all right, well, say everyone starts at zero in the United States when you come here. You start at zero, you got to build up from there. It seems that black people that are born here, descendant of people that were brought here, start at like a -5, -10. Like, if we're putting a number on it, it just seems like, okay, now I got to make it back up to zero. And I'm not saying every person, I'm saying groups of people, families, like, depending on when you start bringing yourself out of the bad situation you're in, obviously your kids might not even be affected by it, but it could last generations in terms of, well, we don't have shit. And they didn't give us anything when they freed us, so 150 years is not going to be that long. What was Rogan's thing? It was like, that's 2 people ago. It's 3. Shit. Yeah. But it's just, I did find, so like, it's almost like, I think it's over 10% of black people in the United States are foreign born now.
Okay.
It might be
over 10%.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And this was 2013. It was 8.7, so it might be way higher.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's most.
No. 9% of the black people.
I was like, Jesus.
I was like, whoa, what? You're opposite.
Okay, 9% of that 13%.
No, 9% of black people that live in the United States are foreign born.
Are foreign born.
Not born here, not descendant of people that come from here.
Okay, yeah, I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what the point you were making, what were you saying? That distracted me. You were saying, so you pose a very good question that, hey, so if culture matters most, weren't they ripped from their culture, brought here, had their culture absolutely destroyed, rebuilt?
I'm sure they had to hide it most of the time if they even practiced anything.
Had this culture that was completely destroyed and molded to what the white slave masters wanted, and the legacy of that is still baked into their culture. I agree with that. But here's my thing. How do you want to approach that? Do you want to go, okay, white people, create us a new culture? Hey, guys, we need you to create this culture. Or would you say it's incumbent of black people to take the reins of that and say, we understand our culture is a little messed up because of the legacy of slavery. We now need to make our best efforts to change our own culture.
But I also think it's like you take like all those people from countries like long ago, or like I said, Japan or Africa or China or Russia, anywhere that people were born there and then came here. I feel like there's like a cohesive culture for countries or communities like that. But when you start from nothing, it's almost like there wasn't like mass communication between freed slaves after they got out. It's like, we're going to do the best with what we have. And a lot of that probably came from the slave masters culture itself, like learning from that, especially if you completely grew up. I mean, I would assume that almost every slave towards the end of slavery grew up in slavery. I mean, I don't know if they were bringing a lot over towards the end, but it's just, I don't see it being a cohesive culture in terms of like, one, this works. Like, this is the way to go about it. This works. You can be successful in America like this, because there was no example. And it was like, there's multiple people that have to go off on their own, make the mistake and realize, oh, fuck, we just wasted that guy's lifetime because he made the mistake of going about it this way. Now we got to hope his kid doesn't make that same mistake. And now it's already 1930, 1940, something like that. It's just, that's just how my mind wraps around it. I sent you something to your Yahoo email, and it was something I read before this earlier, but I thought you'd like it. It's from The Root, and it's just a timeline of events that kind of led to this. And, you know, sometimes they're funny in their articles or whatever. But this is basically like the history of protests for, I guess, black people in the United States. Like from 1619 to now. And it gives every significant date, I guess, that this author thought was significant. But it's interesting because there were certain like laws that were put into the Negro Law of 1740 that South Carolina passed, making it illegal for enslaved Africans to leave the U.S., assemble in groups, grow food, earn money, learn to write. Those were all in there. And you could kill rebellious slaves as punishment. And it remained into effect till 1865. So it's just like, that's even specific to South Carolina. But it's like, holy shit, I had no idea that one state took it to that level. Just reading about that.
Yeah, a lot of states did. But and it's I agree that, you know, black people had it hard in this country for a very long time, but things have changed so much that as whatever race, if you adopt a specific pattern of behavior, that your chances of becoming in this successful and escaping poverty in this America are substantially increased. And a few of those behaviors that white people do is, first, hold a full-time job, graduate high school, and do not have kids out of wedlock. If you do those three things, you're almost 95% chance you will not be in poverty. And white people just tend to do those behaviors.
I know white people that did not do any of those steps.
Yeah, but still, if you do those three things, you're that much more likely to escape the realm of poverty. And these are things that black culture doesn't hold as.
Yeah, and but is that anyone's fault? I guess.
And again, that's the part I'm trying to parse out is that the blame game doesn't even have. Yeah, the blame game doesn't even have to be played. We can just say, okay, this is what it is, and we as a culture are like, the fact that kids are being born out of wedlock at 70%, we got to address that within ourselves. We can't depend on white people or the powers that be to try to change that for us. These are things that we have to take the reins of ourselves. No matter it, to me, I'm making the argument. Remember the pedestrian's dilemma that I told you about, where if you get hit by a drunk driver and he breaks your legs, bruises your ribs, no matter how much, let's say that driver was Bill Gates. Even if he gave you his entire wealth, you getting better is completely contingent upon you and the therapy you do and whether you make an effort to get better. Yep. And that's how I approach the whole black situation. Is like, I understand, okay, let's blame it all on the white folks, but it is still incumbent upon you to make yourself whole again. You cannot depend on people outside of you to make things better for you. It just, I have never seen it work that way. And that's my argument. No matter who the blame is placed upon.
Goddamn. That was making a
weird sound. That's just kind of where I rest. Like, I will, yes, I get slavery, the legacy of it, the harm it created, the lives it destroyed, the culture. Yes. Okay, what the fuck are we going to do about it?
Yeah, but I think that in this day and age, it's easy to say, what are we going to do about it as well? Because we have so much information. We can connect to anyone we want in the world at any given time. And if we don't have information, we can learn it in a fucking day. Like, you can learn anything. But it's like, how long has that been available? Since 2000, maybe? Say when it's available from the palm of your hand. Everyone has a cell phone now, and you can get on the internet with it. So in the last 15 years, that information's been widely available to, we're just talking about black people right now, to black people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, the benefit of the doubt in my mind is that if technology existed earlier and connections could have happened earlier, and even like that, the law in South Carolina, if former slaves or black people, even when they were freed, were allowed to gather peacefully and people not be suspicious of it or it be against the law, like, I just think that, just say we had internet back in like the late 1890s, it would have been so much better for a cohesive culture of, okay, this is how we come together as a group and rise up from what the fuck they just did to us for the last 400 years. But that didn't happen at all. There was nothing like that. I'm sure there's versions of like a support group back then, I guess, but I don't feel like therapy was a thing then. People were just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that was a thing then. But yeah, it's just, I try to think of it from both sides. And I completely agree with what you're saying as well. Everyone has an individual responsibility to make your own life what you want it. Whatever you want out of it, if you want to be successful, that's your responsibility. It's no one else's. And blame game is fine too. You can put blame on someone else, but as you said, you still got to fucking do the work. You still got to put in work no matter what.
There's no escaping.
And I think that, as we said, there's a lot of young people probably at these protests. I think it probably has a lot to do with that. Not having that direction, wanting some sort of thing to believe in, a cause bigger than yourself type thing. And sometimes it's gone about in the wrong way.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I see that part of it too. And one thing that makes the black struggle even that more difficult is the infighting, because there's the light skin, there's the there's the dark skin, then there's the we're conservative, we're liberal, and if you're not liberal and believe these things, you're not black. You're an Uncle Tom. The infighting and the killing of each other in black culture, and not just I'm talking about violent, but ideological warfare is rampant. That there's such a difficulty getting everyone on the same page. And then there's the fight between black Americans and Africans. There's not this one coherent message that we're going to try to do things this way and make it out. Everybody wants to be the savior. So everybody was like, nope, my approach, and it has to be my approach. When all the while, if we could just figure out a way to all get on the same page, whatever that page may be, it would make things that much easier. But me sitting here talking and having the views I have, there's automatically, I'm alienating myself from 95% of black people. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be like, oh, you have a different opinion. Okay, let's see where we can find common ground. And we're going to have to throw away some of your shit. We're going to have to throw away some of my shit. But at the end of the day, we have a logical way of moving forward. But until that occurs, I find that the infighting and not having an agreed upon culture of how best to get ourselves out of this mess, it will remain like this for a long time, because all those other cultures have, like you said, they have that cohesion. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, it's like work extremely fucking hard and study. They don't give a fuck about sports. They don't give a fuck about shoes, about clothes, about cars. They're
within
on top
those
of their,
groups,
academics.
There's still a lot of infighting.
Of course,
that is not exclusive at all.
Of course, it's not an exclusive thing. No, but there is this general consensus in China. It's like, fuck a football, fuck baseball. Well, I want to get straight A's in everything.
In my opinion, most races should try to be like the Asian nations and their approach to work and mathematics and school.
I agree.
Like, our schools are fucking dog shit all across America.
But you see, that's my point though. It's that they have this. Yes, is there much fighting within Chinese groups or Japanese groups of people from different sects and different regions? Of course, but the overarching thing is I'm gonna be the best fucking person in this math class.
Yeah,
like we're gonna compete on that level.
if I get an A-, I'm gonna cry.
or I'm gonna kill you.
Oh my God.
One of the two. One of the two is gonna happen, but either way, somebody gonna die, right? But and that's the argument I'm making. That's the argument I'm making is like, how can we find a way to place our value? Because remember, I've told you this before. I only know of one culture that ostracizes the. Okay, let me start here.
Okay.
Every culture ostracizes the extremely nerdy and geeky people, white, Asian, whatever you are. If you're on that at the high end of the spectrum on that way,
Agreed.
You're going to get made fun of and bullied regardless.
Yep.
But once you get a little step above that where you're super smart, but you're funny, witty, charismatic, charming, every other culture values that. Yeah, I was describing myself actually. Yeah. Like when you're one step up, a couple steps above that, where you have that and it's intertwined with that personality. Every other culture reveres that. It's just the blinders I have on because I grew up in this culture. Only one culture I know of takes those type of people and puts them down, and that's Black culture. They're literally, if you show like, yeah, I'm smart, I know this. I'm not a know-it-all. I'm not a know-it-all at all, but yeah, I know that. I can help you. You're you try to live that life as a Black kid growing up, you will get fucking ridiculed relentlessly. But when white people, that's the complete opposite of the case. Those people are like, everybody wants to be friends with them. Everybody looks up to them.
Yeah,
like
when they're older, maybe, but definitely not in high school.
I mean, even in high school, for the most part, I've talked to, and it's like, and I'm telling you, you can't be the one. You have to be the one who's extremely smart, but makes it look effortless. Oh, yeah. You know, the guy who's like, yeah, I got 100 on it. I ain't study for that shit though. That's the guy. That's the guy that they all want to be. But you say as a black dude, I'm like, yeah, I aced all my math tests and I
studied really hard.
And you get ridiculed to an extent, and those are the cultural differences that they may seem innocuous, but over time they really do add up. They really do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can only take so much, so that's with every group and every type of I guess warrior mentality where it goes against somebody else's, base beliefs or base who they are as a person or human. It's shit is always gonna happen. Shit is always gonna happen.
And here's another example, and I need to find the exact statistics to say them verbatim. But why is it that Black women are more likely to earn significantly less than white women, but are more likely to own a luxury car and fine jewelry? Why? Like, those are the certain little cultural things. Like, I'm not saying it means everything, but it makes me go, all
right, I have a thing. So
what does that mean?
What if that not having a lot to pass down to descendants of slaves, there's nothing to pass down. You didn't have shit when you left, I'm assuming. So what if that also created a culture of wanting to have things that show a status, maybe, from what you're saying, or make you feel good because you can own something I don't know. It's just me spitballing here, but just thinking like maybe not having anything, period, makes some people want material possessions. I don't know. It's just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, and
because I would assume nobody had shit when they left. I would assume they didn't get to take anything from the farms that they were, or the plantations they were on.
Some people got 40 acres and a mule, but that wasn't a majority of Blacks, and it was in a very
kill that mule, eat that mule, and then we got to figure out what we're doing tomorrow.
Facts, right?
I'm hungry.
But so you're certainly right that could perpetuate that. Yeah, but my argument is that is not a cultural marker that indicates success. The accumulation of wealth and success.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So you're right, but it is a marker of what I mean. It is though. It is in a way. It's not the same as owning a home or having a retirement account or being, I don't know, whatever, top person in a company or something. But it's it's still showing like, hey, I was able to get this for myself. I'm doing something right, I guess. I don't know.
I get what you're saying, and yeah, to
it's still a status,
like,
especially if you're buying like a car or jewelry or something like that, because
Yeah,
that's all that
but-
is almost.
Yeah, but the way I think of it is like, why? Let's take for example you as a person.
Okay.
Over your career, while we were at CDW, you made way more money than you. You made way more money than me. Why is it I was more likely to buy a new pair of expensive shoes, clothes? Why? Like why?
That's not necessarily true.
Maybe, all right, you might be the exception. But did you see some of the way some of the richest people in our company dressed?
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. In
The way
terms
they
of
acted, the way their spending habits, Phil.
and you're right. That
you
could
tell
come.
that man made
That
money?
could come from a cultural thing, but at the same time, I think a lot has to do with individual families, which I mean goes right back into culture because the family will take the culture and put that into their. Yeah, it really does. It's all like just a little like you can get more granular and granular the more you go, because we could say the United States is a culture. Mm-hmm. Like everyone here has their own culture, like as Americans. And then, there's people in, say, Virginia. They have their own culture. But then you go down to, like, I mean, you can go minuscule, like, a Hispanic woman who is elderly. Like, it could be, like, down to that group of people. So it's just, culture can come from anywhere and dictate things in a way that we don't always consciously even know. Like, it's almost like a secret formula that if you recognize it can be a super benefit to you. But if you don't recognize it or it's not there, it can be very detrimental to you. I mean, but also the opposite of what I just said is also true, because getting away from your own culture can be the best things for people.
Can be the best thing.
Yeah,
if
it's
you
like
have
breaking
a
free.
culture that's toxic.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, dude, like, because at the end of the day, what is culture really? It's just a conversation for people. Generations.
Yeah.
It's not a
talking forever.
Right?
It's just people talking forever.
Culture, right? Is culture one book? No. Is it one thing? No. Is it one idea? No. Culture is a conversation that's been happening over generations, which is why it is the hardest thing to change.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing to step outside of.
It's the hardest thing to change because we don't necessarily have control over it, because it changes constantly. It's like the hardest thing to change because it never stops for you to change it. Fuck you. I'm going to keep going. That's what culture says all the time.
Yep. It's all encompassing, and then we all have to, for whatever reason, get on the same fucking page at the same time.
Yeah.
Because if I change, that's not a change in culture.
When does that ever fucking happen? That everyone.
It happens a few times every once in a while.
Yeah, you're right.
When people,
like
when these
changes,
fads and these all of a sudden these things will hit our culture and it'll get implemented and adopted.
I mean, you could almost say that coronavirus is a cultural change. Like that is one that we had
created one. Certainly.
Yeah, no control over. Came out of nowhere and is still happening, like with whether we like it or not. Like that's
our culture has forever shifted because of this thing. Forever shifted.
Yep.
And you just never know what's going to come around and force a culture to change. And that's the thing when I have conversations with particularly Black people, because that's my group I grew up in, and it's like, I know how difficult it is to change this thing and step out of it, because most of the time change comes, it's through necessity. Almost all of the time. Yeah. When somebody changes, it's like, oh, I got to change or I die, or I end up in a really bad situation. So I understand if the necessity is not inherent, like right there and then, it's very hard to make that change. Because how do you tell somebody who has a pretty good job and got a fat paycheck and they go out and buy a couple of Jordans? How can you tell them that that's wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but try to get them to understand. But if you can't pay your bill,
and then you go out and buy a pair of Jordans, that would be wrong, right? Like knowing the difference. Yeah, knowing the difference. But it's also,
how do you get that to
as you said, culture, like having financial, I guess, intelligence or acumen in your culture is one of the, like, I guess, top things a culture could have. Like knowing how to set yourself up and keep yourself up is one of the biggest advantages. And if, I'm not saying Black culture doesn't have that, but if they don't, or another culture doesn't, or if the wrong message, I guess, is sent about finances, I mean, not almost like not knowing it's wrong is going to be the outcome, thinking this is the way someone I know operates, someone I look up to, someone who raised me or whatever. That's how I'm going to operate. So it's a slippery slope for sure, because it can be detrimental and positive all in the same fucking culture. Shit.
It matters so much. and it's like, like you take, for instance, some of our highest earning athletes, in our most popular sports. A lot of them go broke very shortly after they retire and leave their careers. And a majority of that population happens to be African Americans. And it's because the idea is like, got to get the cars, got to get the houses, got to get the clothes, got to you conform to this lifestyle that is unsustainable once you stop playing the sport.
Do you listen to Kevin Hart on Rogan yet?
Yeah. Wait, he had a second time?
Yeah, he was just on like 2 days ago.
Oh shit, no, I didn't.
Yeah, he showed up at the studio. It was funny because I was actually going to cut the grass and I was like, I need something good. And I saw Kevin Hart. I was like, fuck yeah. And he was motivational.
I gotta listen to that.
It was super motivational too. Funny, obviously, but he talks about that specifically. It's like right at the beginning, he talks about bringing financial intelligence to the black community, like to kids and young adults that he knows have no one to give them this advice. And that, I guess he said he works with JP Morgan Chase, and they were planning on sending some banker guy down to talk to the kids in like his old neighborhood. And he was like, you can't send a JP Morgan banker down to like my old neighborhood. Like, you have to have somebody that can get on their level, that they actually will understand and respect in terms of like, someone that comes from their background or culture. You can't just have this old white guy go out there and try to say, oh, this is the way to do things. It's like, how trustworthy is that to someone who might have had, been oppressed by people like him their whole lives? So he was just talking about how he's trying to get that financial acumen up with people that don't know about it. Just, owning your home, or whatever, how credit works, credit cards, that's a pitfall for so many people that are in debt right now.
I ran into it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, everybody did. I did too, speaking from personal experience.
yeah. And I get this is not for everyone, and I guess this might sound too restrictive, whatever, but I also think for Kevin Hart to really, because I think that he's addressing something very important, but again, I still think it encompasses something larger, which a cultural change must be made. Because if you try to treat the symptoms without training,
specifically said cultural change, but
and this is where I was going to say he might want to take it a step further. It's like, but then you can't live the life where you're showing off everything you got while telling people that's not the way to live.
I guess,
right? You see what I'm saying?
Can you though? He's got like God money.
But still, so does Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and look how they live.
Okay, they're older. They're much older than Kevin Hart. I would say he's 40.
But Bill Gates and Warren Buffett had that money since they were like 30, 40.
They weren't in the social media age. Give me somebody white his age. I feel like
do you see what
they're showing
the
off
point I'm trying
cars.
to make?
Yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. But
do you see
once you have the money,
it's
it's fine to show off. But at the same time, I guess what you're saying is that people look up to them, and therefore that's a bad message for people looking up to them. But then it's also like, whose responsibility is it that the kid takes the message the right way? Is it the person giving the message?
The person trying to relay the message.
Is it the person giving the message, or is it the person that
I think so.
that teaches their child to understand the message?
Yeah, so definitely, but it depends on where you're trying. If you're talking about who's responsible for Kevin Hart's message, it's Kevin Hart, right?
But it's like,
it's
an underlying message. The message, I mean, he's trying to convey one message of whatever, and there happens to be his mansion in the background, and it's like, okay, well, that's where the man lives, that's where he takes his videos. Like, yes, someone can construe that as, oh, I got to get a house like that no matter what, even if I go broke doing it. But at the same time, it's like, I guess he's conscious of that, and maybe that's why he's trying to do what he's doing now. But I've always thought that too with athletes. Mostly it's like, they're playing a game. They can say whatever they want. How a kid takes that is not up to that athlete. They can't tailor their message to every child that may be listening. They the parents of the child are responsible for making sure that they understand that message, or they don't even get the message, or they say the message is wrong, or what have you. I don't think it's that, the whole like LeBron stick to sports debate, when he talks out about things and people say stick to sports to him. It's like, well, he's got a platform. The man can say whatever the fuck he wants. And if you have an issue with it, or your kids have an issue with it, or whatever, like language he uses or whatever, it's like, well, is that really his fault that your kid was watching that?
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean,
because it's like, especially nowadays. God damn, if you're famous, are you ever not watched? Like, I bet they felt really good during this time, by the way, or either that or they're craving attention, Famous.
Yeah, certainly that's a valid argument that, it's that the parents bear some responsibility in how a message gets relayed from an athlete, because if a kid is looking only to an athlete to get all of their advice, then something has went wrong somewhere. But a lot of the people Kevin Hart is targeting are people who don't have their parents in their life, who don't have that role model at home to say that. So maybe you are the only person that they're looking up to.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a nice house, they shouldn't have a nice car, but just be aware of the message you're sending. If every time I got 16 cars, I got the Bugatti on deck. Like, to me, it just seems it seems counter to the message they're trying to get across and the goal they're trying to achieve. So I guess because you do have so many eyes on you in this day and age, being more aware of the message you're relaying and how it's being perceived is incumbent upon you as the message giver.
Yeah, and I think that's what he was saying, because I mean, for all we know, maybe he grew up with that same mentality, and once he got money, he did exactly what you're saying. He bought the cars, he bought everything he wanted, and he's showing it off because that's the culture that he came from, and now he's realizing that he needs to. I mean, maybe you can still show off shit all the time, but if he's helping people figure out exactly how to navigate the financial troubles of life and figure out how to set themselves up, that maybe that is him, realizing like, I got to do more and not just show off that I made it.
Yeah, and again,
but it was a good episode for sure.
I congratulate him, and I appreciate and respect the hell out of him for doing it, because I am one of those people who I'm like, man, financial literacy, like fuck an English class. Well, I mean, I say fuck an English class. Fuck like a PE class, fuck a arts and crafts class, like scrap that shit and put financial literacy classes into every school across the country. That would make such a difference in poor, rich, everyone's lives. Financial literacy would be so good for them. So I get it, but I just say, with someone with that much influential power, how you live your life also matters. It matters a lot. So if you want your message to be consistent, if you want it to be received exactly how you want it to be received, you also have to live it. Like, don't give anybody marital advice, Kevin Hart. Please don't. You got caught cheating twice, and probably more times.
He could give the advice of don't cheat.
Well, yeah,
right?
Okay.
He's been there.
Let me not say don't give advice, but he wouldn't be the first person I listen to, because you're not living that life. Yeah, how could I take advice on how to take people if you can't do it yourself?
Here's my thing. Celebrities are they're human. They're just like everybody else, and their message, whether it's good or not, yes, I'm sure they want their message to be good, especially because they have PR people, and that's what they always fucking talk about, is making sure that they are in a good light. They look good to the public. But at the same time, I know there's people like that where they want to do their job, and they don't give a fuck about the public. They want to play their sport. They want to make their movies. They want to do their comedy special, whatever. And it's like, it's our society and the media that has held them to that higher standard. Because what makes them more human than us? Like, they are just as human as anyone else. They make mistakes. They have flaws. They do whatever. But it's just that they're under a microscope now, and we're saying that because you're under a microscope, you need to act a certain way. And I say, fuck that. Act however you want. I do not give a shit.
Yeah, no, I'm not making
the case. But I get where you're saying good examples, because, I mean, I think he can act both ways in a sense. Like, he could show off stuff he has, but also say, this is the route to get there.
I'm not trying to say that somebody should act in a particular way. I'm saying that if you do decide that you want to push something across to people, just make sure everything is consistent on your end.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying LeBron shouldn't be able to speak. Kevin Hart, it's just
lot
like,
of people are,
hey
though.
man, if you're, but of course they're gonna say that. Like, say whatever you want, but like, if you want to be taken seriously, just make sure your message is consistent. Don't tell me you shouldn't cheat on your wife, and be fucking mad hoes over here that we all can see. That's all I'm saying. It's just be consistent. That's all. And also, I also believe in, if you don't want to be a role model, if you don't want kids and people to be looking up to you, say it. Charles Barkley made that abundantly clear. I am nobody's fucking role model.
Okay.
I am nobody's.
But you shouldn't have to say it either. You shouldn't have to say it.
Yeah, but I mean, I get you shouldn't have to do
like,
certain things.
You
but
know, you did it as a kid. Like, you
idolize
idolize athletes. Like, I did it too. Like, idolize them. And then when you find out, it's almost like you get to a certain age and you find out they're just people. Like, they're just fucking people. And they say dumb shit sometimes. They do dumb shit sometimes. You're like, oh shit, they just got money and they're athletes. But other than that, we're the same.
But I think that it is an understanding as an athlete that people are looking up to you.
Well,
just by default. So if you have an opportunity, if you can say, if you have the public, the platform to say, listen to this, you could say it on the opposite. Don't listen to me. I am not some wholesome, great role model. I am not that. So if your perception of me is that, scrap it.
Well, and normally that conversation only has to happen when someone calls them out for not being a good role model, though. And it's like, but I never did. I sign up for that? Where did I sign up to be a role model? I don't remember that. I mean,
no, it's a social contract. And I get, it's not written down in law.
Well, no, some of the athletes may have contracts that say that. I feel like that say they can only, like, when you interact with this, like, the public at these events, you can't say these things about the front office, like the team, like,
of course,
about the president, about political situations, because shit, it would be chaos if every time they got on the mic they said exactly what they wanted to.
Dude, there's a reason why LeBron is there. I guarantee you Nike has that in their contract with LeBron, that there's certain things that he can't say, or it's at least implied. Hey man, these things, touchy subjects. Let's not talk about these things. And if he did, he would suffer the consequences financially for it. I'm sure everybody has that. Yeah. I'm sure everybody has that.
The decision still haunts people to this day. They're like, he's an athlete. Get off TV.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be hearing about this. It's like, he's a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, I don't want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Everybody who hates on it tuned in. And do I agree with him doing it the way he did? But then when you find out he did it at a Boys and Girls Club and raised a ton of money for the kids and blah, 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 then I'm like, fuck it. If that was one of the outcomes and he was a bit of a pompous asshole, then whatever, I'll take it.
And then you see, LeBron is the least pompous asshole of the, like, if you think of greats, think about it. A lot of them are dicks. A lot of them are just dicks. Like,
no, Michael was notoriously
we're halfway through. We're halfway through.
Last Dance.
Yeah, Last Dance, and obviously I've watched Muse for Kobe Bryant multiple times, and it's just like, oh god, he was an asshole. He has a quote. He's just like if you want to be great at something else, you're not gonna be a great friend. You're not gonna be a great dad. Not gonna be a great husband. It's just like, god damn, but you're gonna be a great basketball. You gotta pick. You gotta pick.
Yeah. You only have a certain amount of bandwidth in life.
That mentality as well.
Say I can give the equal bandwidth to everything.
Not if you want to be that level. No.
Yeah. For example, I'm giving my bandwidth to you right now specifically. I can't give my bandwidth to my girlfriend right now. No. I had to make a choice.
Yeah.
You can't. I could not give you this bandwidth and give it to her at the same time.
Can't talk and text at the same time. It just don't work.
Can't do it, right? So like. And those who want to be great understand that necessary sacrifice and they make it.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I just think LeBron out of the we'll say Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, like he's the nicest. He seems like the nicest. He seems like he's not just going to be a dick to reporters for no reason. Like it almost like Kobe and Jordan like got off on it a little bit. Like, let me see you squirm real quick. Let me say this and see how it makes you uncomfortable.
And that's why they have 5 championships.
Yeah, I guess so. That's why they didn't lose most of the times they went to the finals.
Dude, if Kobe or Jordan had LeBron's body, they would have 20 championships.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, you could talk about that too, like LeBron in the 90s with his body against other people that when working out wasn't the main priority, I guess. I mean, it was, but not for everybody. Like there were some people that just looked like they just showed up, you know? They just showed up to the gym like, I'm ready. I still shoot even though I'm fat.
Had a muscle on his entire body.
No. When they showed, I think it was in the first or second episode, the Jordan's either rookie or sophomore season when he played the Celtics and he scored 50 in back-to-back games. Like it was nothing, and they lost both of them. But yeah, everyone on the Celtic looks like they they pulled him out the stands. Like, yeah, you come on, we need somebody. We're forming a team. I pick you. You're tall. You're tall. You're lanky, dude, no muscle whatsoever. I see you're tripping over your own feet, but we want you.
Yeah, man. It's basketball has certainly changed, but. To round it out to kind of bring the original topic back to culture, I would, if any black man specifically listens to this podcast, but this advice is, for everyone, it's please don't walk around being convinced that the likelihood of you dying by the cops is a real possibility. You would be doing yourself a great disservice. And it's an unwarranted fear. And please think for yourself. Don't buy into the bullshit that you're seeing on Facebook, which is where people get a majority of their news. It's not real. And they do it because they know they get more clicks, which gets them more money. So please, please, please. I know these situations are tragic, and I hope the best for every one of those families. I hope justice is served and something is done to make them at least come as close to whole as possible. And my heart goes out for everyone who's lost their lives. But for the rest of us who remain, please, please, please put this in the proper perspective.
That was good. That was a good way to wrap it up. I will just say that I either one of my friends said this the other day or I heard someone say it online. I cannot remember. I don't know the source, but when children study 2020 in their history books, it will be a big fucking chapter or one whole fucking book just on this year. And it's June, by the way.
Yep.
So
got most of it left.
Kobe died at the beginning of this year. Like, what the fuck?
Correct.
Kobe just died. Oh, it was my brother that said that to me. Yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, Kobe. Correct. And I completely forgotten about that. I thought that was like 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago in my mind.
Yep.
Yeah, but all right, man, this was a good one. I gotta jump off, but we'll jump on again next week or in 2 weeks or something, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely. And to all the people out there that may be listening, everything will be all right.
Couple of L's, couple of blunts, couple of wins, couple of drinks, couple of girls, couple of trips, couple of bags. I got my foot on the gas. I get the money and dash. You know what's funny to pass? Why is you doubling back? Open your mind, turn on the vibe, and get off the internet. Leave it behind, say your goodbye, move it along. Light up the spliff, I wear my heart on my wrist. I push the start on my whip. I got a garden and slit. I play my part and I dip. Pour me the Henny and fill it up. For me, I really don't give a fuck. Rich me like an ATM and they still feel like I don't give enough. Summer house up and die. Ace of spade with the indica. Where I'm from, you hear pop, pop, pop. Niggas tripping, so you better.